He looked at me with the same eyes from 2 years ago. Cold, dismissive, confident that I was nothing more than a name soon to be forgotten. But this time, he sat on the other side of the conference table. And me? I was the one running the meeting. What he didn't know, I'd been planning this since the day he cut my power. And I hadn't forgotten a single detail. Not one. The Monday morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows caught the edge of his portfolio as he slid it across the mahogany table. His hands, once so steady when signing my termination papers, now betrayed the slightest tremor. My name is Ellen Rourke, and I wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this boardroom with its imported Italian marble table. Not in this building where security once escorted me out with a cardboard box of my belongings. And certainly not in this chair, the one Bradley Knox used to occupy when he systematically dismantled my career with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. 2 years ago, I was the youngest person ever appointed to QuantiveX's board of directors. 32 years old, first college graduate in my family. Daughter of a mechanic from a town in rural Del Mar that most people couldn't find on a map. I'd clawed my way up from junior developer to senior architect, then to VP of Innovation after my algorithmic trading system increased quarterly profits by 300%. The financial press called me the future of fintech. Forbes put me on their 30 under 30 list. My mother framed the article, hung it next to my diploma in her living room, the first things you'd see when you walked through her front door. I remember the exact moment everything changed. March 15th, 3:47 p.m. The old CEO, Marcus Whitman, had just announced his retirement due to health concerns. The board meeting was supposed to be routine, discussing transition plans, reviewing candidates. I'd prepared a presentation on maintaining innovation momentum during leadership changes. I never got to present it. Bradley Knox had been COO for 8 years, silver-haired, Harvard MBA, the kind of man who wore cufflinks worth more than my father's monthly salary. He'd been Marcus's right hand, his chosen successor everyone assumed. But assumptions weren't guarantees, and Bradley knew it. He needed to eliminate any potential opposition, any voice that might question his vision for QuantiveX's future. I was that voice. Ellen lacks the seasoning for strategic oversight, he'd said, his tone paternal, almost sympathetic. Brilliant with code, absolutely. But the board needs members who understand the full spectrum of corporate governance, perhaps in a few more years. The other board members, all men over 50, all golf buddies of Bradley's, nodded sagely. Within 48 hours, I received the formal letter. Restructuring of board composition to better align with evolving strategic initiatives. Corporate speak for, you're out. But Bradley wasn't satisfied with just removing me from the board. He wanted to ensure I'd never climb high enough to challenge him again. The innovation department was dissolved. My team was scattered across different divisions. My trading system was credited to a collective effort led by Bradley's hand-picked replacement. Even my keycard stopped working before HR officially processed my termination. The tech blogs that had celebrated me just weeks earlier now ran stories about my overreach and inexperience. Someone, I never found out who, though I had my suspicions, leaked that I'd been difficult to work with and resistant to guidance. In Silicon Valley, that was code for unemployable at the senior level. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the city lights through rain-streaked windows, holding a glass of wine I couldn't bring myself to drink. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. Colleagues who'd texted me daily had already disappeared. The transformation from rising star to cautionary tale had taken less than a week. But as I watched Bradley's CNN interview that night, him speaking smoothly about QuantiveX's exciting new direction and the importance of experienced leadership, something crystallized in my mind. He'd made one crucial mistake. He'd left me alive in this industry, broken, humiliated, stripped of power, but alive. And in the world of high-stakes technology and finance, that was all I needed. The fall was harder than I'd imagined it would be. My savings evaporated within 4 months. Greyrock's cost of living didn't care that I was no longer pulling an executive salary. The condo went first, then the Tesla, then the designer clothes I'd bought to fit in at board meetings. I moved into a one-bedroom in East Shore, 40 minutes from downtown, where the walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's alarm at 4:30 a.m. and the tap water ran brown every third Tuesday. I took contract work debugging code for startups that couldn't afford senior developers. $20 an hour, sometimes $30 if they were desperate. The kid who hired me for one gig, couldn't have been older than 23, recognized my name and spent the entire meeting staring like I was some exotic zoo animal. "Weren't you?" he'd started to ask. I told him I had another meeting and left with half the work unfinished. The grocery store became my new boardroom. I'd stand in aisle 7, calculating whether I could afford both milk and eggs this week, while my brain, the same brain that had designed multi-million-dollar algorithms, worked through combinations and permutations of poverty, ramen on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Skip lunch Tuesdays and Thursdays. 1 coffee per week. Black, from the gas station. My therapist's office was the only luxury I allowed myself, and even that was through a sliding scale program. Dr. Martinez had gray eyes that never judged when I showed up in the same unwashed hoodie 3 sessions in a row. "What do you feel when you think about Bradley Knox?" she asked one Thursday afternoon. "Nothing," I lied. "Ellen." "Fine. Everything. Rage? Hatred? Disgust?" I paused, stared at the water stain on her ceiling that looked like a wolf. Fear. Fear? That he was right. That I was never good enough. That I was just some small-town nobody playing dress-up in a world I didn't belong in. She let the silence stretch, the way therapists do when they want you to hear your own words. "But mostly," I continued, "I feel empty. Like he carved out everything I built myself to be and left this shell." My mother called weekly, pretending she didn't know about my situation. She'd chat about the weather, her garden, the new pastor at church. Anything but the fact that her daughter, her pride and joy, was buying generic cereal with quarters found in coat pockets. I'd inject false cheer into my voice, tell her about consulting opportunities and taking time to explore options. The lies tasted like ash. The worst part was the invisibility. I'd walk past the QuantAvex building sometimes, compelled by some masochistic urge, and watch my former colleagues stride by in their tailored suits, eyes sliding over me like I was another homeless person to avoid. Maybe I was. Sarah Chen, who'd once brought me coffee every morning and called me her mentor, walked right into me one day. She mumbled an apology without looking up, already moving past before recognition could dawn. Nights were the hardest. That's when the thoughts came, circling like vultures. What if I hadn't challenged Bradley's proposal to cut R&D? What if I'd played politics better, smiled more, threatened less? What if I'd seen the knife coming before it was between my ribs? Some nights, I'd pull up QuantAvex's stock price, watch it climb under Bradley's leadership. Each uptick felt like a personal insult, proof that I'd been the problem all along. He'd won, completely, thoroughly, definitively won. I started keeping a bottle of vodka in the freezer. Just one drink, I'd tell myself. Just enough to blur the edges. But 1 became 2, 2 became 4, and soon I was waking up on the bathroom floor, face pressed against cold tile, wondering if this was what rock bottom felt like. It was on one of those bathroom floors, at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, that I had my moment of clarity. Not enlightenment, not hope, just a simple, brutal thought. If they'd given me a chance to live with dignity, I would never have looked for justice. But they took everything. I pulled myself up, looked in the mirror at the stranger staring back, hollow eyes, tangled hair, skin gray from too many sleepless nights, and made a decision. I wasn't going to die on this bathroom floor. I wasn't going to fade into nothing. I was going to take back what was mine. And I was going to make Bradley Knox watch while I did it. The plan started with a name I found in my old contacts, Marcus Zhao. Marcus had tried to recruit me 3 years earlier for his venture capital firm, Apex Partners. I'd turned him down. Why leave a rising trajectory for the uncertainty of VC? But desperate times required swallowing pride. I messaged him on LinkedIn at 2 a.m., not expecting a response. He called 6 hours later. Ellen Rourke, I heard about Quantum X. Their loss? That was it. No pity, no questions. Just an offer. I need someone who understands fintech infrastructure, contract basis. You interested? The work was mind-numbing. Due diligence reports, technical assessments of startups that would probably fail within 18 months. But it paid enough to move out of East Shore, and more importantly, it gave me access. Access to pitch decks, investor networks, and most crucially, to information about who was buying and selling in the fintech space. That's how I found Draylock AI. It was buried in a pile of passes. A small machine learning startup focused on predictive analytics for financial institutions. Decent technology, terrible business model. 2 founders burning through their savings. They were 3 weeks from shutting down when I approached them with a proposal. I couldn't use my real name, of course. Ellen Rourke was toxic in fintech circles. But Elena Rodriguez, a shell identity I'd created with the help of a lawyer who specialized in asset protection, could invest freely. The founders didn't ask questions when Elena's LLC wired them $50,000, money I'd scraped together by liquidating my retirement account and selling everything I had left of value, including my grandmother's wedding ring. We need to pivot, I told them in our first meeting, speaking through a voice modulator on a video call. Camera off. Forget selling to banks. Focus on integration tools for legacy systems. The unsexy stuff that nobody wants to build, but everyone needs. They listened, maybe because they had no other choice. Maybe because the strategy actually made sense. Within 6 months, Draylock had its first major client. Within a year, revenue hit $10 million. I reinvested every penny, living on ramen and spite. Each small victory, a new contract, a key hire, a mention in TechCrunch, was a brick in the wall I was building. But I needed more than just a successful company. I needed leverage. The opportunity came through Marcus. Ironically enough, Apex was part of a consortium looking to take a major position in Quantum X. Bradley's leadership had been profitable, but uninspiring. Stock price up, but innovation stagnant. Some board members were getting restless. There's blood in the water, Marcus told me over coffee. Knox is good at politics but shit at vision. Investors are starting to notice. I spent the next 3 months orchestrating a symphony of corporate destruction. Through Elena Rodriguez's growing network, I whispered in the right ears about Draylock's superior technology. I had the founders publish white papers that made Quantum X's systems look antiquated. I recruited 2 of Bradley's best engineers, people who remembered me, who'd been waiting for a chance to jump ship. The masterstroke was convincing Oliver Hartman to join the play. Oliver ran Steinberg Capital, Quantum X's largest institutional investor. He didn't know Elena Rodriguez was Ellen Rourke, but he knew a good opportunity when he saw one. When Draylock announced a merger with 2 other portfolio companies I'd been quietly acquiring stakes in, creating a direct competitor to Quantum X, Oliver started making calls. The hostile takeover took 4 months. Bradley fought it, of course, throwing every defensive measure in the corporate playbook at US. But he was fighting ghosts. Elena Rodriguez didn't exist. The shell companies were registered in Delaware and Nevada. And the paper trail led nowhere he could follow. When the dust settled, Draylock AI owned 47% of Quantum X. Combined with Oliver's 15% and the other investors I'd turned, we had control. The night before the emergency board meeting, I stood in my empty apartment. I'd sold all my furniture to fund the final push. And practiced what I would say. Not Elena Rodriguez's words. Ellen Rourke's. I bought a new suit for the occasion. Not designer, just clean and well-fitted. I had my hair professionally styled for the first time in 2 years. Applied makeup to hide the dark circles that had become permanent fixtures. As I walked toward the Quantum X building that morning, I thought about my mother's living room wall. The framed Forbes article was probably still there, gathering dust. After today, she'd have something new to frame. The security guard at the front desk did a double take when I presented my visitor badge. Ms. Rourke, Ellen Rourke? Yes, I said, allowing myself the smallest smile. I have a board meeting to attend. He fumbled with the phone, probably calling someone to confirm what couldn't possibly be true. But the computer system, the same one that had locked me out 2 years ago, now showed my name with a new title: Chairman of the Board, Quantiv X Corporation. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt like ascending from hell. Each floor we passed was a year of my life I'd never get back. A sacrifice I'd made for this moment. When the doors opened, I could hear Bradley's voice from the boardroom, loud and confident. He was probably explaining why the takeover was actually a good thing, how he could work with the new ownership, how his experience was invaluable. He had no idea what was about to walk through that door. The boardroom fell silent when I entered. Bradley was mid-sentence, something about maintaining operational continuity, when his words simply stopped. His mouth remained open for a beat, two, before closing with an almost audible click. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. "Gentlemen," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, his seat. "Please, continue." Nobody moved. The 12 men around the table looked between Bradley and me like spectators at a tennis match, waiting to see who would serve first. "Ellen." Bradley recovered his composure faster than I'd expected. "I wasn't aware you were involved with the acquisition." "There's quite a bit you weren't aware of, Bradley." I opened my portfolio, pulled out a single sheet of paper. The agenda for the meeting. Item 1, election of new CEO. Item 2, organizational restructuring. Item 3, personnel changes. "This is a mistake," Bradley said, his voice steady but his hands betraying him, fingers drumming against the table. The board, I interrupted, consists of 7 new members as of this morning. You'll find the proxy statements in your packets. Oliver? Oliver Hartman stood, all 6'4" of German efficiency. "Steinberg Capital has designated new representatives to the board, effective immediately. Ms. Rourke has our full confidence." Bradley's allies, the golf buddies, the Harvard network, the men who'd nodded along as he destroyed my career, looked at their information packets like they were written in Sanskrit. 3 of them had already been bought out. 2 more would be gone by end of day. The last 2, I'd keep around. They'd been Bradley's reluctant supporters, not his true believers. They'd fall in line. "You can't do this," Bradley said, but the certainty was gone from his voice. "I already have." I slid another paper across the table. "Effective immediately. Thomas Chen will assume the role of CEO. You know Thomas, don't you?" "Bradley? You fired him 6 months ago for philosophical differences." "He's very eager to return." Thomas had been one of the few executives who'd questioned Bradley's decisions. Brilliant strategist, terrible at politics. Perfect for what I needed. "As for you," I continued, maintaining eye contact with Bradley, "I have good news and bad news." He said nothing, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. "The good news is you still have a job. Director of Regional Operations, Northwest Division. The bad news is it reports directly to me. Weekly meetings, every Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. That's a demotion of 4 levels," someone whispered. 5, actually, I corrected. "But who's counting?" Bradley stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "You think you've won? You think this petty revenge makes you better than me?" "No," I said simply. "It makes me your boss." The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Bradley's face had gone from pale to flushed, a vein visible at his temple. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. Part of me hoped he would. Instead, he laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "You've destroyed yourself for this. Spent everything, became everything you claim to hate. For what? To see me suffer?" "To see you work," I corrected. "Every Monday. Without fail. You'll present your reports on regional sales initiatives, customer satisfaction metrics, operational efficiency improvements, the same mundane, soul-crushing presentations you used to sleep through when others gave them. Except now, you'll be the one standing while I sit. You'll be the one waiting for approval while I check my phone. You'll be the one whose ideas get dismissed with a patronizing smile. I stood, gathered my papers. The choice is yours. Of course, you can resign. Walk away with your dignity. What's left of it? Find another company willing to hire a 50-year-old former COO who lost his company to a hostile takeover led by someone he personally blacklisted. I paused at the door, turned back. Or you can stay. Keep your health insurance. Keep your 401k. Keep the illusion that you're still a player in this game. Your first report is due Monday. Don't be late. As I walked out, I heard Oliver addressing the room, beginning the formal transition process. But I also heard Bradley sink back into his chair. Not his chair anymore, just a chair. And the sound was sweeter than any symphony. That night, I sat in my still empty apartment, eating takeout Chinese from the container. My phone buzzed with congratulations from people who'd ignored me for 2 years, suddenly remembering we'd been close friends. I deleted them all except one. It was from my mother. Saw the news. Your father would be proud. Also, the frame was getting dusty anyway. Time for a new article. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in 2 years. Monday was in 5 days. Bradley had that long to decide whether his pride or his mortgage was more important. Based on what I knew about his 3 kids in private colleges and his wife's spending habits, I had a pretty good idea which would win. The fortune cookie at the bottom of my takeout bag read, "Success is the best revenge." I crumpled it up and threw it away. Success was never the point. Control was. Monday arrived wrapped in Seattle gray clouds and the kind of persistent drizzle that makes everything feel heavier than it should be. I arrived at the office at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before our scheduled meeting. The executive floor was mine now. Bradley's old office converted into my new domain. I'd changed nothing except the chair. His leather throne went to storage. I brought in something ergonomic, practical. I wasn't here for comfort. At 8:55 a.m., I watched from my window as Bradley's BMW pulled into the parking garage. The same car, the same reserved spot. But 3 floors down now. Executive parking was for executives. At exactly 9 a.m., my assistant knocked. "Mr. Knox is here for his meeting. Send him in." Bradley entered wearing the same quality suit he'd always worn, but something was different. The fabric hung differently on him, like armor that no longer fit. He carried a leather portfolio and a laptop, tools of middle management he hadn't touched in years. "Ellen," he said, standing in front of my desk like a student called to the principal's office. "Have a seat. Bradley, let's see your report." He opened his laptop, turned it toward me. Slides appeared, professional, thorough, exactly what I'd requested. Sales figures for the Northwest, detailed breakdowns by district, recommendations for Q3 improvements. He'd done the work. Of course he had. Bradley Knox didn't know how to half-ass anything, even his own humiliation. "Revenue is up 3% month over month," he began, his voice carefully neutral. "The Portland district is overperforming." "I can read," I interrupted, the same way he'd once interrupted me. "What I want to know is why Seattle is down 8%. He shifted slightly. "The competition from Vertex Financial has been aggressive. They're undercutting our rates. Then match them. That would require approval for a margin reduction, which you don't have the authority to grant." I leaned back in my chair. "Put together a proposal. Have it on my desk by Wednesday. Continue." For 45 minutes, I dissected his presentation with surgical precision. Every weakness, every excuse, every attempt to gloss over problems. I pulled them into the light and examined them like specimens. I used every technique he'd taught me through negative example. The dismissive glance at my phone mid-sentence. The barely suppressed sigh at a reasonable explanation. The slight frown that suggested disappointment without saying it. "The Tacoma office has a morale problem," he said near the end. "And they need leadership presence. Someone should visit, address their concerns." "Great idea. You should go. This week." His jaw tightened. "That's a 6-hour drive each way." Then you'd better leave early. I closed his laptop, slid it back toward him. Same time next week, and Bradley? The font on slide 7 was inconsistent. Details matter. After he left, I sat in the silence of my office, waiting to feel something. Triumph, satisfaction, joy, anything. But there was only emptiness, like eating a meal that fills your stomach but leaves you hungry. The next Monday was the same, and the one after that. Bradley never missed a meeting, never arrived late, never submitted substandard work. He took my criticism without complaint, made the drives to Tacoma and Spokane and Portland without protest. He was being professionally perfect, and somehow that made it worse. Week 6, something changed. The Vancouver expansion is a mistake, he said suddenly, deviating from his prepared slides. I looked up from my phone. Excuse me? You're moving too fast. The infrastructure isn't there, the talent pool is limited, and the regulatory environment is a nightmare. You'll burn $12 million before you see $1 of profit. That's not your concern. No, it's not. He closed his laptop. But you're making the same mistake I did. You're so focused on the victory that you're not seeing the battlefield. We stared at each other across the desk. And for the first time in 6 weeks, I saw Bradley Knox instead of a beaten man going through the motions. You want me to suffer, he continued. Fine, I'm suffering. My wife doesn't understand why I haven't quit. My kids think I'm a failure. My golf buddies don't return my calls. You've won, Ellen. But what are you winning? Justice, I said, but the word felt thin. Justice would have been building something better than what I built. Instead, you've built a cage for both of us. You sit in this office 12 hours a day, managing my humiliation. I report to you every Monday, performing my penance. We're both trapped in this dance, and for what? He stood, gathered his things. The report's in your inbox. Tacoma's numbers are up 4%. I recommended promoting Jennifer Walsh to district manager. She reminds me of you, actually. Young, brilliant, hungry. Try not to destroy her, too. After he left, I walked to the window, looked out at the city Bradley and I were both prisoners in. He was right, of course. I'd won everything and gained nothing. But I couldn't stop now. The machine I'd built required feeding, and Bradley Knox reporting to me every Monday was the fuel it ran on. My assistant knocked. Your 10 a.m. is here. Send them in, I said, returning to my desk. To my role. To the hollow victory I'd paid everything to achieve. The truth was simple. I didn't keep Bradley around to punish him. I kept him around because without him to focus on, I'd have to face what I'd become. And that reflection was uglier than any revenge, week after week. The Monday meetings became a ritual of sophisticated cruelty. Bradley would present, I would critique. He would accept the feedback with professional grace. We'd both pretend this was normal, just business, while the ghost of what we'd both lost haunted the space between us. By month 4, I'd perfected the art of corporate torture. I'd ask for reports on Friday afternoon, due Monday morning. I'd request revisions that contradicted previous feedback. I'd schedule him for 6 a.m. flights to visit regional offices, knowing he lived an hour from the airport. Every inconvenience precisely calculated, every demand just shy of unreasonable enough for HR complaint. The Bellingham office needs assessment, I told him one Monday. In person, tomorrow. That's a 4-hour drive, each way. Then stay overnight. Submit your expense report by Wednesday. He never broke, never raised his voice, never gave me the satisfaction of visible anger. He'd become a master of malicious compliance, executing every order with a competence that bordered on mockery. But others noticed. The employees who'd once feared him now saw him differently. Not with sympathy, exactly, but with a kind of morbid fascination. Here was Bradley Knox, the man who'd ruled through intimidation, now reduced to PowerPoints and mileage reports. They whispered about it in the break rooms, the elevators, the parking garage. Some found it poetic. Others, disturbing. Thomas, our new CEO, approached me after one particularly brutal Monday session. Ellen, can we talk? We sat in his office, technically larger than mine, but we both knew where the real power lay. Bradley's actually doing good work, he said carefully. The Northwest Division is up 15% under his management. Your point? Maybe it's time to ease up, move him to a different role, or let him go. He's free to resign whenever he wants. Thomas studied me with the kind of look therapists perfect. Is he? Or have you made it clear that resignation means you'll destroy any chance he has elsewhere? I didn't answer. We both knew I had that power. A few calls, some strategic conversations, and Bradley Knox would be unemployable anywhere that mattered. This isn't healthy, Thomas continued. Not for him, not for the company, and especially not for you. The company's stock is up 30%, and you look like you haven't slept in months. He wasn't wrong. I'd developed a routine. Work until 2 a.m., sleep until 6, repeat. Weekends were for strategy, for planning Bradley's next assignment, for ensuring the cage remained locked. I'd stopped seeing my therapist. What was the point? I'd achieved my goal. I'd won. The revelation came on a Monday in month 5. Bradley was presenting quarterly projections when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his professional mask slipped for just a moment. Pure, naked fear flashed across his face before he could hide it. I need to take this, he said, already moving toward the door. We're in the middle of... My daughter's in the hospital. He paused at the door, looked back at me. Unless you'd prefer I finish the presentation first? The challenge in his voice was clear. Was I monster enough to say yes? Go, I said. He left, and I sat alone in my office, staring at his abandoned laptop, his half-finished slides about revenue projections and market penetration. His daughter, Rebecca, if I remembered correctly. Pre-med at Johns Hopkins. I'd met her once, at a company Christmas party years ago. Bright kid, wanted to work in pediatric oncology. I found out later it was a car accident. Not life-threatening, but serious enough. Bradley spent 3 days at the hospital. He submitted his Monday report from the waiting room, complete with apologetic note about the formatting. When he returned the next Monday, something had shifted. He looked older, more fragile, more human than the titan who'd destroyed my career. Rebecca's recovering, he said before I could ask. Thank you for the flexibility. We went through his presentation, but my heart wasn't in the performance. Each criticism felt forced, each demand hollow. When he left, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went home at 6 p.m. That night, Sarah Martinez, a mutual connection who'd stayed neutral through everything, called me. Did you hear about Bradley's wife? What about her? She filed for divorce, cited irreconcilable differences. But everyone knows it's about his demotion. She didn't sign up to be married to a regional director. I felt nothing. Then I felt everything. Then I felt nothing again. Ellen, you still there? Yeah. Look, I'm not judging. But when does it end? When is it enough? I stared at my reflection in my dark laptop screen. I don't know. Figure it out before you become him. She hung up, leaving me with the truth I'd been avoiding. I already had. I'd become Bradley Knox, just with better justification. I wielded power like a scalpel, cutting precisely where it would hurt most. I'd traded my soul for a seat at the table, then burned the table down to build a throne. The next Monday, Bradley arrived with his usual punctuality, his usual preparation, his usual professional emptiness. But when he opened his laptop, his hands shook slightly. Coffee withdrawal, maybe, or something deeper. Before we start, he said, I wanted to inform you that I'll be taking FMLA leave next month, 3 weeks. Rebecca needs follow-up surgery. Of course, I heard myself say. Take whatever time you need. He looked surprised, suspicious even. Waiting for the catch, the condition, the knife between the ribs. There wasn't one. I was too tired to twist it anymore. Another Monday morning arrived, just like all the others before it. The October rain hammered against my office windows as Bradley entered at exactly 9 a.m. 6 months we'd been doing this dance. 6 months of reports and revisions, of calculated humiliations and professional emptiness. He set his portfolio on my desk with the same mechanical precision he'd perfected over 24 Mondays. Northwest Division, he began, but I raised my hand. Bradley, sit down. He sat, wary, waiting for whatever new torment I'd devised. Why haven't you quit? The question hung between us like a challenge. He was quiet for a long moment, considering. Because you need me to be here. I don't need. Yes, you do. His voice was calm, almost gentle. You need me here every Monday, playing the villain in your redemption story. Without me to punish, you'd have to face what this has cost you. What you've become. I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. I stay, he continued. Because I deserve this. I destroyed something in you that can't be rebuilt. I took a brilliant young woman and tried to erase her from existence because she threatened my ego. So yes, I report to you every Monday. I drive to Tacoma and Bellingham and every other forgotten office you send me to. It's my penance. It doesn't fix anything, I said. No, it doesn't. We sat in silence. Two people who'd destroyed each other in different ways, at different times, for different reasons. Outside, Grey Rock went about its business, deals being made, careers being built and destroyed. The endless cycle of corporate ambition grinding forward. I got an offer, Bradley said suddenly. Small firm in Portland, senior advisor role, half the salary. But Rebecca's medical bills are covered. You're leaving? I'm asking if you'll let me. There it was, the final test of power. I could make one call and that offer would disappear. Bradley knew it. I knew it. The old me, the one from 6 months ago, would have done it without hesitation. Take it, I said. He studied my face, searching for the trap. Just like that. Just like that. He stood slowly, like a man testing whether his chains were really gone. At the door, he paused. Ellen, can I tell you something? I nodded. You were right to want revenge. What I did was unforgivable. But revenge isn't a destination, it's a detour. And you've been driving in circles for 6 months. So what do I do now? Build something that matters, something that isn't about me or what happened 2 years ago. You're brilliant, Ellen. Don't waste it on ghosts. He left, and I never saw Bradley Knox again. The following Monday, 9 a.m. came and went. His absence was louder than his presence had ever been. I sat in my empty office, staring at the chair he'd occupied for 24 weeks, and felt nothing. Then, relief. Then something that might have been the beginning of peace. I called Thomas. I'm taking a leave of absence, 3 months. Ellen. The board can decide if they want me back after that. I cleaned out my office that afternoon, for the second time in my career, but this time by choice. As I walked through the lobby, past the security desk where I'd made my triumphant return 6 months earlier, I realized something. I'd spent 2 years planning how to take back my seat at the table, but I'd never asked if I still wanted to be there. My mother called that evening. Saw the news about you taking leave. You okay? I will be. Good. Your old room's ready if you need it. I smiled, the first real smile in longer than I could remember. Thanks, Mom. 3 months later, I started my own company. Not to compete with Quantive X, not to prove anything to anyone, just to build something useful. Something clean. Something that had nothing to do with Bradley Knox or revenge or the person I'd had to become to win a game nobody should play. But every Monday morning, at exactly 9 a.m., I catch myself looking at my office door. Waiting for a ghost that doesn't need to report anymore. Some habits, like some scars, never fully fade. The last I heard, Bradley was doing well in Portland. His daughter recovered completely. His divorce was finalized. He was rebuilding, just like me, just like everyone who's ever won a war that should never have been fought. I never found out if he felt the same emptiness on Monday mornings. Some questions don't need answers. I didn't reclaim my seat at the table. I built my own damn table. And this time, I decided who got to sit at it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Ellen's position? Let me know in the comments.